I can also introduce myself. I'm Bavatarni, application developer here at ThoughtWorks. And today I'll be talking about a deep dive on the payment gateways. So let's get started. I'll share my screen. Yeah, we all know how payment transaction happens, right? We use a lot of online website in our day-to-day life. We make many online transaction. There is always a curiosity to find out what happens behind. So I was also a person with that curiosity and also a kind of fear that it's related to payment, right? So we all will I be able to do it integrated like that due to security reasons? But working on it, I learned on various stuff that could make my understandings clear, and I wanted to share that to you people. So let's start. Um, so let me start with a formal definition. What are payment gateways? Uh, so to tell, it is a technology that captures the payment from the customer and transfers to the business or a merchant account, right? So these payment gateways help online business to accept the payment, like to collect payment from the customer. So this is a basic understanding. And they also provide various payment options, like you can pay through debit card, you can pay through credit card, you can pay through UPI, etc. So what do we call this? We call them as payment methods. So before moving on to detail, I want you people to be clear on two main terminologies. One is payment providers and one is payment method. Because during development, these two terminologies used to confuse a lot. So let's make clear that one. What are payment providers? So the payment providers are like, you have like I have listed few logos here, few brands here, that is PayPal, Klarna, Razorpay, Stripe, Adyen, and Google Pay. So I think you all might have at least encountered one of this logo, one of this name when you make some online payment. Mostly Razorpay and Stripe are being used in mobile payments. Yeah. So the payment providers lie in between the customers and the merchant and transfer, like take money from the customer's bank account and put it into the merchant bank account. So this is simple. The payment providers usually process the money and does the magic, right? And let's come to payment methods. We have different type of payment methods which a user could choose to pay money with, right? Through, like he can enter his credit card details, he can enter his debit card details, or he could just enter the UPI ID and he'll be redirected to the Google Pay app or some other UPI app like Phone Pay, etc. And he should be able to do the payment, right? So the method is the type of data which the user hold, like the type of account the user hold, that the way which the user could make the payment is that one, and what happens behind the scene is being controlled by these payment providers. So I hope you are clear in these two terminologies, that is payment providers and payment methods. Let's move on to next slide. So in this, let's look at the players involved in the system. So these are the players involved in the system mainly. Let's consider an example. I'll take one of my favorite application, which is Swiggy. So let's say I'm the customer, and what I do, I'll choose what are all the items, what are all the food items I need, browse and add it to the cart. And then after that, what comes? The payment page, right? That is, so here the online store is Swiggy. So what happens there in the payment page? You see a lot of payment options available, right? Did you think that all the payment methods listed is coming from the code base or the code base of the Swiggy core application itself? No, there are some external integrations like if you consider PayPal, so in the entire presentation, I would be considering PayPal as an example. So I'm letting PayPal as an example here, but I think we don't have PayPal in Swiggy, but just for an imagination, right? So if you see some PayPal logo or PayPal button in any application, so it is not coming from the applications code, the real applications code. It is coming from a different place, like it is coming from the PayPal, and they have exposed it using an API, and that is being embedded into any of the application. It happens like that. So this is the one we call it as integrations. Okay, so now let's come to the flow. I'm in the payment page. I have the different payment method to choose, and uh, I click on anything, like maybe for anything, like your maybe UPI. So like you people will be using UPI frequently, right? So let's consider this UPI. So you enter the UPI ID, what you will see, you will get redirected to another screen, right? Like it will load a screen with some timer and say you to accept the money from go and approve the money from Google Pay app, right? So what is this? This is the one we call as payment gateway, and there is some provider behind this which we may know or may not know. So some providers might show their logo like Stripe, Pay, like that. Some might not show their logos. So these are the payment providers are hiding behind this visuals, what we see as payment gateway, and fetching data from the user, and detecting money from the customer's account, and then what does they credit to the merchant account. So the merchant account here, whenever I mention merchant or business, anything, you can relate it to Swiggy or Amazon or something like that. Okay, so our money, the customer's money, my money has been detected from my bank account and got transferred into the merchant account. So this is the overall flow, which imagine players involved in the system. So I said in the last step, on the online store, on the payment page, you see not all the components belong to the application code itself, right? There might be some other plugins or integrations merchant, right? So how this is done, like how this is possible. This is possible when a payment provider them, right? So what are the what is the business of these payment providers? If we want to talk about that, they basically enables this transaction and takes a small part of commission from that. So if you consider PayPal, for a single transaction, I think they'll be considering some quite number of percentage, or some like as a what do you call, like they're earning, they take it if for one transaction. So how we can integrate this external payment provider into our application, anything like mobile, both mobile and web application. It's like the concept is common for everything. So they provide APIs. They provide APIs through which we can communicate with them with certain tokens and secrets, etc. We have to go through their documentation, or they'll have all the APIs listed over there, and details of them. So and also these are the common ways to integrate. That is, you can do it through APIs. You can also integrate through some SDKs. So if you want to integrate with the web, right, they provide some JavaScript SDKs, and will be able to plug in or embed or connect whatever terminology you could understand. You can do it with the your website. These are the common ways one could integrate Okay. I think I'm done with a brief explanation of what are payment gateways and things. And here comes the question. Are you a developer and want to integrate payment providers into a project? No, I'm not doing any marketing. I'm just trying to catch your attention. Okay. So let's look at a use case so that you will be able to understand it easily. Okay. Let's consider an e-commerce web application. You can consider any e-commerce web application. So I consider Swiggy or Amazon. For today, we'll be considering example PayPal. So if we want to integrate the payment provider PayPal into our in my like I'll say that it's my e-commerce web application. I want to integrate PayPal into. What would you do? As a first step, you are given this task. What you will do? You have to search for how to integrate and those things, right? Okay, let's say let's imagine each things which I say, so that you will be able to figure out, like imagine the steps in mind, picturize the steps in mind basically. So these are the steps actually I have listed, but I'll not show this. I'll just say it. People try to imagine and we will look at each steps. So let's see from a customer perspective, right? What the customer sees. Customer will see the PayPal button. So PayPal, I think they have this only way to integrate, that is they provide this button. Anyone who want to integrate PayPal should use this button, right? Should use this button provided by them as SDK. So for front end, let's consider web application as of now. So web, for the front end, the user want to see that button, right? For that, what you will do in the UI, what you will do? So we have JavaScript SDK provided by PayPal. So it is a script. You can embed the script in your normal component, whatever you use, so that you will be able to see the button. And there is a question here. How PayPal ensures that it is you making that call? It is you trying to load that script, load that button script, right? For that, we have two things. One is client ID. The other one is access token. Okay. So what is client ID? My For my web application, I will have for my web application, I'll have an account created, right? So I can show you that. Yeah. Okay. So there is this PayPal provides a developer account. Okay. So it is a sandbox account used for developmental purposes. And you can get the client ID. So client in the client ID means nothing but the unique ID given for your business, for your business account, right? In order to communicate through APIs, right? So if you go to this one, that is my apps and credential, you will be able to find the client ID and client secret of your account. So you're a business, you are creating an account for your business, and you will be able to find the client ID from there. Okay. So this is the first step. And let's look at the next step. So the next step, I told two things, right? Next one is access token. You need access token. So you, with the client ID, PayPal will be able to identify that, okay, I'm trying to load button for this specific user, for this specific business. But how will it ensure that you are the correct person, is not any hacker or someone trying to load it? So for that, we have token, we have access tokens. So how we'll get these tokens? We have to get access token endpoints, that is API provided by PayPal. Okay. So let me show you the step. First step, you can see, use JavaScript SDK, load button we are in the second point, right? That the SDK, so sorry, the PayPal is providing the API. So you need some code fetch the token through that API, right? So now the part of backend comes. So that you can look at the second point, that is integrate with the PayPal API on backend. So first we need the access token, right? So that as a first step, you can integrate with the access token API. Like after a few slides, I'll be showing you the code for that, so that you'll be able to understand better. As of now, you can just imagine how it is working on the front end and back end and all those stuffs. Okay, so now what through that API, we'll be able to fetch the access token, right? Now we have two things in hand. One is client ID and another one is access token. So with that, we'll be able to load the PayPal button. Okay. Now, what happens? Like the third point, fetch access token through API and load the PayPal button. I think 3 steps are complete, right? Now, what will happen? User will be shown that button. Now, what happens? When the user clicks on the PayPal button, he'll get redirected to the PayPal site. So with this PayPal, nothing is in our control. Okay, so we'll just redirect user to the PayPal site, and PayPal will get take care of all getting the payment details. And I think we can link our bank account in PayPal, and user can approve it. They'll be shown a screen. So I think this is what the screen looks like. When the button is clicked, they'll be shown this PayPal screen. They can log into the account and they can approve the transaction. Okay, I'll come to that again. So let's consider happy case in this scenario. Okay, when the user approves the transaction, what will PayPal do from their end? So from the JavaScript call, right, what it will do is it will return whether it is success or failure, some status. So since we are considering the happy path, it will return success status. And with the PayPal itself, it will have some order details. So updates, order approved, internal to it, right? So I'll also explain this in the later slides. So what it will also have some data that for this user, for this client, I have approved this transaction. The user have approved this transaction, like that. Okay. So until now, with customer's perspective, he will think that money is like, I went to the PayPal website, I approved it, and money will be detected from the payer's account. Okay, but will it come to the merchant account? No, we have to make another API call in order to do that. So now, as of now, what have happened is user clicked on the PayPal button. He using the access token and the client ID, we have integrated that, and he got redirected to the PayPal site. He approved the transaction, money is there in the customer's account, and that is approved. And we are PayPal returns that, okay, the customer have the customer have approved the transaction status to the front end, and the wherever the script or the button is getting load. Okay, and it also stores the details of the order and the approved details, everything. What we have to do, we have to actually have separate methods for what happens on the scenario of approval, what happens on the scenario of cancel, what happens on the scenario of error. So I have discussed 3 main scenarios here on approve. So since we are considering the on approve, that is the happy path, what we will do is we will call a capture endpoint. So this word capture comes everywhere. When you go through any payment provider's documentation, you will encounter this word capture. So what does that capture means? Capture means that money is going to get transferred from the provider's account. That is, as of now, what happened? Money is detected from the customer account and went into the PayPal, detected from the customer account and went into PayPal's account. It is not yet given to the Swiggy or Amazon or any business. Okay. So what we have to do as a business, we have to make another API call, that is to capture the money. So we get the detail that user approved the transaction. So we'll get that detail and make the capture API call to complete the transaction. So the capture API call is to transfer money from the provider's account to the merchant account. So here PayPal account to anything, any e-commerce website's account. So the business will have their business account, right? So only in this steps money is captured and the whole process is complete. Okay. If there is any steps that is being missed, the money is like not transferred, the process is not success. Now let's talk about on cancel and on error. Why do we need this? So let's consider on cancel scenario. User clicks on the button, user goes to the PayPal website, and he have some thinking oscillations and all, and he don't want to purchase it now, so he just cancels it. What happens in this scenario? Will we will we be able to capture it? No, we will not be able to capture it. But what we have to do, that can also we can define using this on cancel method. Like we can show some error. It will get redirected from the PayPal side to our side, right, back. So during that time we can show some thing like you cancel the transaction or anything which is customizable according to the business need. And also the last scenario, that is on error. On error scenario might be let's consider like this, right? Like user approves the transaction, maybe he is not having enough balance, or when he approves there is some internet connection and the redirection doesn't happen. So in that scenario we can also handle the error. So since we don't have that success status, right, since we don't have the on approve status, right, we will not be making the capture call. So in this case what happens is money might have detected from the customer's account, but it stays with the PayPal or the payment provider, and there will be some cycles checking, like is there any uncaptured account, uncaptured money with us. So like 1 week, like weekly once or 2 days once, like that. So by which only money will be refunded back to the customer, like if the transaction didn't go well. This is how the refund actually happening. The refund happens behind the scenes. I hope you are clear in the steps. If you are not clear, like I think in the upcoming slides also there are some clarities being provided, so that you'll be able to understand more. So in this case I'm taking PayPal and discussing about PayPal. There are also multiple payment providers, but the way and the terminology used is almost common. So if you understand this completely, I think you'll be able to integrate it with many like most commonly used providers. Okay. We have been talking about this APIs, API integration and everything, right? So these things, these APIs will be provided by the payment provider itself. Let's look at some of the frequently used API operations. Okay, these are the most frequently used API operations. So first is to initialize or create payment. So one is to get access token, that is I think we discussed in the last slide. Let's look at about the initialize or create payment. So in the previous slide I mentioned about sixth point. If you look at the sixth point, you can see that PayPal updates order approved internal to it, like it holds that status within itself, right? So how will it know what order and everything? So in order to do that, we have to do one pre-step. So when the user clicks the button, right, we have to make this call, that is initialize or create payment, to let the PayPal know that user has initiated transaction with this order detail, with this order amount. These are the customer details, this is the payment details, this is the amount you have to detect and everything. So initialize payment will just create an order data, like order data, a record, basically a record in the PayPal, so that when the user goes and approves, right, the PayPal will be able to know that, okay, there is an order created and user has approved this order, so that I can go and make this order status as approved, right? You can also see this in action. I'll show that later. And let's move on to the next one, which is fetch supported payment methods, right? So in the beginning, if you remember, I have discussed about the difference between the payment providers and also the different payment methods, right? A single payment provider could support multiple payment methods. For example, there is a payment provider called Adyen. They support UPay transaction, they support debit card, credit card transaction. Multiple methods of transaction can be integrated using a single payment provider also. So this call can be used to identify, this API can be used to identify what are the methods supported by that payment provider. Okay. Next, coming to the third one, which is finalize or capture payment. So I think I already briefed about this capture. So this is nothing but when the user approves, we can make the capture or finalize payment, like the whole transaction is going to end, the end call, the final call, or the capture call. In this call, the money gets detected, like money finally comes into the merchant account or the business account, or like example one, Swiggy's account. Okay, so this is the whole process needed for a single transaction. And let's look at the fourth one, which is refund payment, right? So I was telling that when there is some on error, what happens, like if money is detected from the customer and not transferred, like money is detected from the customer but the order didn't go well, right? In that case the refund will, like we have to somehow initiate the refund, right? Maybe I think in many payment providers this is common. Like how the refund payment happens is, we will let the provider know that these are the orders which we didn't get. Like we have created this order but we didn't capture this order since it is cancelled or due to some error. So we will let the provider know, and they will refund back. They will not they will refund back to the customer. In some cases it happens like this. In some cases provider itself will take care of this scenario. And the fifth frequently used API operation, fetch saved card details. So you go to an application, you make you shop through them, you enter your card details, and the next time you come, they will just ask for your CVV, and they'll ask for OTP alone. They would have already stored all your account details, right? You see them, right? Is that user data? Is that user data with the web application? Or like if I'm ordering to Swiggy and Swiggy is storing my my payment details, my account number or my card number, my expiry date, etc. Is that with Swiggy? Are they allowed to have it? In most of the cases it is not. It is with the payment provider. Like if Swiggy have integrated through some any payment provider, I'll consider example as Adyen, and they support credit and debit card. That detail will not be there with the Swiggy, but they will be able to show that how they can make use of this API. That is, they can get these saved card details and they can show it. They are not allowed to store any payment related, like not any payment related information, but basically the card details and all. So this one, if you want to make your customers easily pass through the payment page from the second visit, you can use this API to do that. So these are the most frequently used API operation which I have encountered. And yeah, let's move on to the next slide, which is data involved. So in all this process, data, which is very important thing to handle, right? So these are the common data involved. Let's start from the customer details. Customer details would include, I think, the basic customer details, right? Like name, address, and amount, purchase, like everything, like basic customer details, I think. And with the amount details, like what are the items he buy and for how much did he buy. So these are the amount details. And the third one is client details. So I showed you the PayPal panel, right? So here, if you see, you have this my apps and credentials, from where you can get the client ID and client secret and all the information related to that merchant or that business, right? So from this client details, I'm mentioning about that one. That is the details of the business account itself, through which we can make the API call. Like the tokens, we can get the tokens, and all the API calls, we need the client details. And Next, coming to the payment details. Yes, like if we use lot of payment providers and the lot of payment methods, we have to mention, like we also need details about what is the payment method we are going to make that API call and those things. So basically payment details means that payment provider and method details. What is the name of the provider? What is the name of the method, etc. And transaction details. I think let's come from the top. First is access token. So whenever you are integrating with any payment provider, the first thing needed to communicate with them is the client ID and client secret, right? With them and the API endpoint you are going to make call into, you will be able to get the access token. And with this access token only, all further calls should be made, like create payment, capture payment, refund payment, and everything. So that happens through this access token only. So when I say order details, I mentioned that I have mentioned that the PayPal stores all these order details, right? Whenever an order is success or failure, the user approved the transaction and everything. The one which we do using when we make the initialize call, when we make the initialize payment call, we'll have all these order details with the payment provider. And finally, coming to the transaction details, when the transaction, like we are talking about initialize payment, we are talking about capture payment and everything. What is this? This is a transaction, right? So when the transaction is success or failure, what is the status of the transaction? What is the transaction ID and everything? So that data is very mandatory for the web application, like the application or the e-commerce website you are trying to integrate the payment provider with. So with transaction details, I mean that it is transaction ID and status, the whole transaction. What happened with the whole transaction, like how it can be fetched again from the payment provider. They'll return as a transaction ID through which we'll be able to communicate further with the, like in order to refund payment and all, right? We need to know what transaction it is, what is the detail of the transaction, what is the status of the transaction and all. So we'll get that in the previous calls, like initialize and capture call. And if there are any asynchronous call for few payment providers, we'll get the transaction and ID and status. So we can use that for further refund and cancel kind of operations. Okay, finally, let's come on to the demo. So I just integrated backend alone, calling the API part, and the front end part, I think you can imagine. So we have the web application, we have the e-commerce web application, and we have integrated our PayPal button into it. What happens now? Like user clicks the button, he sees the login screen, and he logins to his account. So during this time, the control has been entirely transferred from our application to the PayPal's website or the endpoint. So if you see the URL also, it will not be www.swiggy.com or amazon.com. It has been transferred to paypal.com. So it's the control is entirely not with us. We don't have to worry about any data or any details. PayPal will let us only know about the status of the transaction, right? User can now log into the account, and he might have PayPal balance. He might have linked bank account with the PayPal account, so he can approve the transaction. So now, as we are considering only the happy scenario, we are thinking that user approves the transaction, right? Now, let's look at the backend in action, like backend APIs in action. What happens? What we should do behind the scenes? Before jumping on to that, I'll show you some. Okay, it's not visible. Okay, before going on to the implementation part, I'll let you know about few APIs. So these, I think it is provided, the package itself being provided by the PayPal itself. So you can, if you want, like you can refer the website and import the Postman package so that like you can easily make calls and verify. So in this talk, I have been mentioning about three main things, right? One is getting the access token, and other one is creating or initializing the payment, and the third one is capturing the payment, right? So first, let me show you the access token endpoint, like how a success response looks like. What we need ultimately, we need this access token, right? We need this access token ultimately. So how we'll get that access token? We have to hit this endpoint, that is auth to token, like www.sandbox.paypal.com. The base URL is paypal.com/this API. And I think along with this, we also need to send two headers, which is client ID and client secret. I think since this is just a saved example, we don't have that. I'll show it in the code, that one. Let's also look at other two calls, which is create payment. So here, so the naming would differ from payment provider to provider. In context of PayPal, they have named them as like initialize payment. The process of initializing the payment or creating the payment, they have named it as create order. So the call would look like this. They also have a body. They'll have all the details of the purchase unit. I'll show this like in detail in the code, but as of now, you can consider this capture endpoint, like it will return us the status, like whether it is success or like if it is created, whether the order is created with the 201 and the status created. So with that, we'll be able to verify that the order has been created. And we'll also look at the capture endpoint, a success case. So the success case would look like this. We'll have created status and also status as completed. For this, I think only detail we need is order ID. So order ID we'll get from the create order call. So what we are doing, we are getting the access token through which we can create, like initialize the payment and finalize the payment. So in the initialize payment, we will get an order ID, this ID. So we'll get an order ID with which when the user approves, when the user finally approves, we can make the final call, which is the capture payment for the order call, and we can complete the payment. Okay. Coming to the code. So let's look in action. Like I have integrated these API, like access token endpoints and create order endpoint, and also the capture order endpoint. Let's look at what is happening. So now I have this get access token method alone. I'll comment out, have commented out the create order and capture order. So I have this, have a main method, and I think I have a simple implementation for getting the access token create order and capture order. Okay. So let's look into the get access token, what I'm doing. So look at the lines which I'm highlighting. So those are the main places. And so if you see, have given the URL, that is, it is a post method, and it is the base URL would be paypal.com and this endpoint. And I think this body is like the mentioning about the type of call we are making. It is client credentials. And I think this is for setting the basic authentication, that is client ID and client secret. So client ID and client secret, I have config, I just have it as a variable. So I'm setting the basic authentication and I'm sending the request. So these are the basic things needed, and you will be able to get the response. So I think we are making the response, checking for the status code, whether it is success status, and we are decoding it. And here I'm printing the token. So if I go and run this, so it has started the payment process, getting the access token, and we got the access token. So from the whole response body, which you see here, I'm just showing you the access token alone. So which is only needed for further calls. Okay. Now let's come to the next thing, that is create order. So now what I'll do is I'll uncomment this, which is, so for this create order, I have mentioned that we need to provide this details of the order, right? We need the customer details, amount details, what are all the items included in this purchase, and what is the cost of each items, what is the total cost, and also the address details of the customer. So one thing, I think most of the payment provider made it mandate to send them the address details recently, which I have come across. So what I'm doing here is I have the data as JSON. So if you see, there are multiple data we are providing here. If you see purchase unit, I think it's about, it have the amount details, it have the item details, what is the unit amount, what is the quantity, and everything. So this is basically the order detail. And if you see, there is also other two things here, return URL and cancel URL. So what is this? What is this return URL and cancel URL? Like I said, that when the user clicks on the button and gets redirected to the PayPal site, he may approve or cancel, do something. Okay. What should the PayPal do? What URL should the PayPal redirect after the transaction has been completed? So I think when the user cancels the transaction, he can be redirected to a different URL. So you can mention that in the cancel URL. And if the transaction is approved, you can redirect the user to any URL. So that can be mentioned in the return URL. So these are the extra data we are providing along with the purchase data. So we have this. So I have read the JSON and I have unmarshalled it, and I'm calling the create order. So let's look at the implementation of the create order. So create order will have this, it is a post method since we are sending body. And also we have this basic like URL endpoint, which we should hit, which is actually checkout/orders. And we are converting the body into bytes, and we are sending it. And along with that, you could ask me, where is the access token? Yeah, here is the access token. So we send them as the header through which PayPal will be able to validate who is the user making the call. Is this the authenticated, authorized user making the call, right? And yeah, so with the status code, we are checking that it is success or failure and everything. And I think, yeah, and in the response, we'll get one main thing. That is the order ID. With that order ID only, we'll be able to perform the capture order, right? So we are giving some data, and in return we are getting only one ID, which is the order ID. So let's look at this also in action. I'll minimize this. So I have printed the order ID. Yes. So if you see now, two calls has been made. One is to get the access token, and second call is for the create order, and it had written the ID. So the order ID is 3 and 0 for this order. Okay. Now the access token we got, and we have created the order. Now it's time to fulfill the order. That is to make the final capture order, right? Let's also see it in action and see what happens. So now we have the capture order method. I think in the capture order method, it is also same as we saw before. Like only difference is only data which is needed for capture order endpoint is the order ID, right? Something in some cases. So in context of PayPal, they are calling it as order ID. In some other payment providers, they might call them as transaction ID and all. So you shouldn't confuse. You should just think about two things. One is what happens before the call, what happens during the call, and what happens after the call. Like how the initialized payment happens, how the finalized payment happens. That is the thing you have to look at. And to finalize the payment, we need the order ID. So now if you see, we have this order ID, right? What I will do is I will take this, and so here I have gave a variable for order ID. So we have this order ID which we created now, right? We have that. And Let's comment this out, else it will create again. Okay, so now we don't have anything. We have the endpoint to capture. We have order ID to, this is the order ID that it need to capture, and we have the access token. That's it. Same as above. So it will make the call. It will send the request, and it will check for the status and display as if there are any errors. Let's see what happens. So now if I run, what happened? It didn't work. Okay, let's look at what is the issue. So let me highlight the issue. So it is saying that order is not approved. So order is created, but it is not approved by the customer. So you can see the message clearly that payer has not approved the order for the payment. So since I didn't have any UI for it, I didn't redirect the user. I didn't have any way that user could approve the transaction and store that detail, like user has approved the transaction. So if some business is trying to capture payment without your approving the order, it wouldn't happen. Okay, so this is how it is also secured. I think this is the last thing. So the capture order didn't work because we don't have the UI and user didn't approve it, right? Right. So yeah, I could also show you the panel. So this is the developer account. If you create any developer account, Sandbox account, you would be given two mock kind of users. One user is like user customer in terms of customer, mock customer account, and other account would be the mock business account. So now I'm looking at the mock business. Okay, let me log in. Now I'm selecting the business account. And if you see that, the last call which we made, you can see the request and the response. If you see, the response would be the order not approved. The same which we saw in the terminal is here. And the status is also 422, which is unprocessable entity error code, right? And before that, we made a call, right? Which is to create the order. And if you see that, the status of that is 201, which is created. So here you will be able to monitor or what are all the APIs accessing your account, your business account. Yeah, that's it. I think from this, you're clear on how the whole process goes. And also with the data, we don't have the data. We don't store, we shouldn't store the sensitive data of the customer. It should be entirely with the payment providers. Let's just have a closing note. So what you would do when you want to integrate a payment provider, you should keep some steps in mind. First, you should actually read policies provided by them. So they might have some policies that the business should definitely agree to, about the commission amount, about the data, and certain details like what are all the data we should send them, what are all the data we won't store, like that and all. So read the policies of the payment provider which is providing, which is very important. And also look for the country support, look for the payment methods it supports. So these are the first step, right? And choose them. There are multiple options, so you don't have to go with what you know already. So you can read their policies and choose. And yeah, we shouldn't collect the data that one. And if you are finalized with the payment provider you are going to integrate, look for the SDKs and APIs. So most of the commonly used languages, they will have, like if they are an established payment provider, they'll be having an SDK for most of the commonly used language, popular languages. And also they'll provide API support for most commonly used languages. So ensure that your language, they have API support for your language. And the next one is create a Sandbox account, so that you will be able to get the client ID, client secret, and all those details. So that only you will be able to call their APIs, right? And before making any API call, you have to get the token. Using that get token, like you with the client ID and secret you have, get the token and make whatever the call you want. Only thing is, make sure that what is the data you are going to store, what is the data you are going to get, and what is the call you are going to make and implement. I hope that I have delivered what I thought. Until next time, thank you, everyone.
There's a question in the chat.
Okay. Okay. If on click of PayPal button, the PayPal login screen comes up. That means that button click has triggered an API call with client ID and client secret to get access token. Since PayPal is a JS package, would the client ID and client secret be available in browser? It may be visible when we view source. Actually, with the front end, it is different. With the front end, what happens is when we load the button itself, we'll be making the call. Like the call would be to the backend. Like before showing the button itself, we will be getting the token from the API, and we'll not share the client secret for the button loading. We'll only be sharing the client ID and access token. So it won't be visible. It won't be, we don't use client secret in the front end or JS anywhere. We just use the client ID and access token. I hope I answered your question, Jaipal. Okay. So there is also another questions, I think, by Jaipal. What is the authentication or authorization mechanism between Swiggy to Google Pay or PayPal, right? I think the same thing which your second question detailedly ask states this. So we'll have backend APIs which would, so we'll purely store this client IDs and client secret in the backend, or not with the front end at all. We'll not export client, we'll not expose this client secret to the front end and anywhere in the front end code, which is very, very dangerous, right? So we'll get the access token and it will have some expiry timing and all. So how that we'll fetch it through the backend API and then we'll send it to the PayPal or any payment provider through the front end SDK loading. So there is another addition to it. So when we package all these client IDs and client secrets, it will be packaged so that we'll not be we'll not be exposing any sensitive data. Isn't the payment mode mandatory for creating an order? If so, can same order be fulfilled with multiple payment modes? So I think the payment mode, you mean that method. If so, can same order be fulfilled with multiple payment modes? When actual capture happens, how would that be tracked by the provider in such case in times of refund? So I think from what I have encountered in my experience, and also what I have mentioned, I think the payment provider also stores the status of the request and calls. So when the user approves a transaction, it will know that it is approved, and if the capture happens, it will complete the payment. So it will not let for the second, so the status will go for completed, payment completed. So if there are any other capture calls after that, it will let you know that it is completed, you can't capture again. So I think I have answered one of your question. And if so, some order can be fulfilled multiple payment mode. What?
Okay. Sorry. Am I audible?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. So my question was, let's say like you created an order, and supposedly the first payment capture failed for some reason, and I used a credit card, and I'm retrying the payment through net banking, for example. how would the refund be processed? Would the provider be able to track both under the same order, the both ways of fulfillment?
Okay, next time when you initiate a transaction, a new order will be created and this order will be there. So that provider, when you like cancel the transaction, you didn't capture, so the money is with PayPal, right? So next time when you come out of it and cancels, it will create as a new payment only, it will create as a new order only, so it will not touch the existing order, so that your two orders will be differentiated. And when the refund cycle comes, or when we refund, the refund call is initiated, it will refund back the money to the customer.
Okay, so the relationship between the order and the payment fulfillment method is always 1-to-1 in this case.
Correct.
Thank you.
What is the difference between payment provider and payment aggregator? Okay. I know the payment provider. I haven't come across this aggregator terminology, so I don't think I can answer it. Thank you. Thank you, people.
Thank you, folks. That's for the day. Thank you for the participation, and we'd love to see how we can make it more lively. And from now on, the Geek Nights will also be open at Coimbatore here in the office. So if you are available and you want to drop in, you can always drop in at the Coimbatore ThoughtWorks office. Yeah. Thank you so much. See you again. Bye-bye.